Somewhere around 2 million years ago, a shift happened inside the human body that made giving birth one of the most dangerous things a woman could do. No other primate faces anything close to it. Chimps deliver their babies in a matter of minutes, usually alone, with no help at all. For humans, labor can stretch across an entire day, and even with modern medicine, things go wrong regularly. So, how did our ancestors survive this? How did a species that struggles with one of the most basic biological functions make it far enough to build civilizations? The answer involves a set of adaptations, social instincts, and survival strategies that stretch back millions of years. And once you understand them, you start to see human evolution in a completely different way. It starts with a problem that began roughly 2 million years ago when our ancestors started walking upright on two legs. Bipedalism rewired the entire skeleton. The pelvis had to rotate inward and narrow to support an upright spine and allow efficient walking. That change solved one problem and immediately created another because now the birth canal was dramatically smaller. At the same time, something else was happening. The human brain was growing fast. Over the next 2 million years, our skull size roughly tripled. Larger brains meant smarter, more adaptable offspring, but it also meant larger heads trying to pass through a narrower opening. Evolutionary biologists call this the obstetric dilemma. Walk efficiently or give birth easily. Evolution could not fully optimize for both, so it landed on a compromise. The compromise was to deliver babies early. Compared to other primates, human newborns are born remarkably underdeveloped. A newborn chimp can cling to its mother within hours. A newborn horse stands and walks almost immediately. A human infant cannot hold its own head up for months, cannot walk for over a year, and depends entirely on caregivers for years after birth. This early delivery reduces the skull size just enough to make it through the birth canal. But it also means human mothers cannot do what other primates do. They cannot care for a helpless infant alone while also gathering food, staying mobile, and watching for predators. They physically need help. That need is what shaped human social structure more than almost anything else. Research into modern hunter-gatherer societies, which offer our closest window into prehistoric life, consistently shows that birth was never a solitary event. The grandmother hypothesis, developed by anthropologist Kristen Hawkes in the 1990s, argues that older women who were past their own reproductive years played a critical role in infant survival. Grandmothers who helped feed and care for grandchildren allowed their daughters to have more children more frequently. The groups with strong grandmother involvement had dramatically higher survival rates. This is likely why humans live so long past reproductive age. In most animals, lifespan tracks closely with fertility. In humans, it does not. Women can live decades beyond menopause. The evolutionary explanation is that post-reproductive women were not a resource drain on the group. They were one of its most valuable assets. But it was not just grandmothers. Anthropologists who have studied childbirth across cultures found something striking. In nearly every pre-industrial society ever documented, women did not give birth alone. They gave birth surrounded by experienced women who had done this before. Some researchers believe this pattern is so universal and so old that it may represent one of the earliest forms of specialized knowledge transfer in human history. Women watching women, learning, passing it forward. Now, here is where the anatomy gets genuinely strange. Unlike virtually every other primate, human birth involves rotation. The baby enters the birth canal facing one direction, then rotates mid-birth so that it exits facing backward away from the mother. When a chimp gives birth, the infant comes out facing toward the mother, who can reach down, clear the airway, and guide the baby free. When a human baby exits facing away, the mother cannot do this safely on her own. Pulling the wrong way can break the infant's neck or spine. This anatomical quirk is one of the strongest arguments that human birth was almost never meant to be solitary. The geometry of it requires assistance. Having someone there to receive the baby and guide the final delivery is not a cultural preference. It is something the human body appears to have evolved to require. There is also the matter of duration. Human labor is long, physically exhausting, and dangerous in ways that compound over time. Hemorrhage, infection, obstructed labor, eclampsia. Each of these was a real cause of death in the ancient world, and still is in regions without obstetric care. The communities that developed practices around supporting laboring women, including experienced attendants, specific birth positions, and methods for managing complications, would have passed those practices to the next generation along with their genes. Knowledge itself became a survival mechanism. Researchers have found evidence of this in skeletal remains. Ancient burial sites across multiple continents have turned up individuals who clearly survived significant injuries or chronic illness, sometimes for years. Survival that would have been impossible without sustained care from others. The archaeological record, as far back as we can trace it, suggests that caring for vulnerable group members was not a modern invention. It was a core feature of how early humans lived. There is one more piece of this that is easy to overlook: pain. Human childbirth is genuinely more painful than birth in other primates, likely because of the rotation and the tight fit of the birth canal. But pain in a social species has a function. It signals need. It summons help. A woman experiencing extreme distress during labor communicates clearly to everyone nearby that this is a critical moment requiring attention. In small, tight-knit groups that spent their lives together, that signal would have been impossible to ignore. Social bonding, in other words, was not just emotionally useful. It was biologically functional in the most literal sense. So to answer the question, ancient humans survived childbirth the same way they survived almost everything else that should have killed them. Not through individual toughness, but through each other. The grandmother who had been through it before. The women who gathered. The knowledge passed from one generation to the next about what to do when things went wrong. The social architecture of early human life was not separate from biological survival. It was biological survival. Every human alive today is the descendant of a woman who was not alone when it mattered most.